have some other chamber folks in the room helping to get everybody in, and hopefully you all have a handout. So my job in the room today is to make sure that you have silenced your cell phones, so please do that. That you use the Wahuva, I think I'm saying that right, I don't know. That you use the app to ask questions, so hopefully you have downloaded the app. It's very helpful, and there's a lot of communication and a lot of things happening on that app. This session is being recorded, so please note that. Don't get up and stand in front of the camera, that would be awkward. And then there are exits, and I think I heard restrooms right outside of the exits behind us. So there are exits on the sides and in the back of the room. So that is my housekeeping duty. And the next responsibility I have will be to introduce Karen Smith, who is with People's Security Bank, and she is going to introduce our speakers this morning. Karen.
Good morning. My name is Karen Smith. I'm Senior Vice President and Relationship Manager with FNCB Bank. It's great to be here today with everyone. Empower is the premier women's leadership conference in northeastern Pennsylvania. This event highlights the ability all women have to create positive change in local communities. As a community bank, we have a commitment to support local charities, nonprofits, and community events. Each year, People's Security Bank is proud to support this fantastic conference as well as sponsor this year's professional development track. On behalf of the bank, I have the privilege of introducing your incredible speakers today, Dr. Andrea DiMattia and Dr. Schmude. Dr. Andrea DiMattia is the Vice Provost for Education Administration and Assistant Professor of Medical Education at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. With more than 25 years of higher education experience, she is a certified life coach and emotional intelligence facilitator. Dr. DiMattia's scholarly interests include leadership, organizational change management, institutional accreditation, and resilience. She has presented at the American Associate of Medical Colleges specialty group meetings on regional medical campuses, generalists in education, facility affairs, business affairs, and institutional planning. Dr. DiMattia received a bachelor's degree from Clarion University, a master's degree from Clemson University, and a doctorate from the University of Southern California. Dr. Michelle Schmude is the Vice Provost for Enrollment Management and Associate Professor at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. She is a faculty member in the Harvard Macy Institute's program for health professions, educators, and president-elect of the Academy for Professionalism in Healthcare. Dr. Schmude's scholarly activities focus on professionalism, professional identity formation, admission trends, advising, mentoring, and coaching, and the use of e-portfolios to promote and assess competency. Dr. Schmude received a bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree from Point Park University, and a doctorate from Wilkes University. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for being here today.
Good morning, everybody. So we're so excited to be here. I'm Andrea DiMattia, and I'm going to be channeling, I think, Dr. Missouri from the first session, because the first thing I want to say is all of that introduction kind of made me a little uncomfortable, and what I really should be praised for is that my jacket matches my shoes, right? So you didn't come with mismatching jacket and shoes. And the other thing I want you to continue to think about from that first opening session was that whole notion of thought, emotion, action, because that's really going to be something that we'll be calling back to in this session. So let's get started. Click my clicker here. Oh, there I am again. There's Michelle. She'll be introducing herself a little bit more later. Okay, there we are again. We're everywhere. I'm really uncomfortable in my picture. So the agenda for today's session is we did our introductions. We want to give you an overview of EQ, right? And there's probably folks in here who have worked with EQ, done the EQ testing, probably folks who haven't done the EQ test. So we want to try to make sure that we're being kind of covering all of those audiences. We want to do a think, pair, share, a debrief, and then your takeaway and question and answers. We got to get that done pretty quick because we're on a tight time. So what do we want to get accomplished today, right? So what are our learning objectives? We want to make sure that after attending this session, you can recognize the domains of EQ, and we give you a handout. So you can take it with you and you can put it up on your corkboard, and then you'll have them there to keep in mind. And we also want to make sure that you can identify areas where maybe you're already functioning pretty well. Maybe there's areas where you need maybe a little bit of improvement. But again, this is one of those sessions where you have to be really honest with yourself, right? Really take a hard look. And again, like it was said earlier, this is Vegas. So what, stays here. They're taping this, which made me a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. We'll try to get through it. So here's the poll. In your current organizations, are any of you using EQ as a basis for your interviewing processes in your organizations? Okay, we have one. Jane's shaking her head. She's like, yes.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jason. Okay. How many of you are using EQ when you're doing your performance evaluations in your organizations?
Just like that.
Okay? So when you think about this, and I'm just going to say this now, if you look at the back of the wheel, the EQ wheel, I bet more of you are doing this than you think you're doing it. And the reason I'm saying that is because your organizations have missions and values, and when you're looking at an evaluation or a performance evaluation, probably there's questions about how does your employee or staff member live the mission of the organization or live the values of the organization. So you're looking at things and you're going, okay, so how is the person with their self-expression? Because that's building relationships, right? It's making that team building piece of it. It's bringing people in. How do they collaborate with people in other departments? Do other people want to work with them? Are they the person that's like, hey, oh no, I got to work with Andrea again? Super! I'm really excited about it. So I think, as we're going through some of these things, you'll be thinking about these things like, yes, every day I'm kind of working with the staff and my employees, I'm working with kids or with my folks in the community on the, Little League board or whatever, or however you're spending your time. You're making these assessments. What we want you to think about is, how do you assess yourself in these areas? So, of course, we've got to go to the literature, right? So how many of you have gotten an email or seen a newsletter or read some kind of article about emotional intelligence, right? Why it's important, all these things. So we wanted to make sure that we brought this up because in this first article, The Importance of Emotional Intelligence in Business, gives a little background about emotional intelligence and what we're specifically talking about when we're thinking about emotional intelligence. It talks about why and what piece that is. So you can train a lot of people to do a lot of things. Okay? One area where you can really train people is in their emotional intelligence, right? How to build teams, how to communicate with people. But those aren't the areas we really focus on. We focus on what's the job, how do we get the information in the spreadsheet? Once it's in there, what are we doing with the information? How do we make decisions? What we don't really spend a ton of time talking about is, hey, how do we build the team? How do we get people to understand how to interact with one another? Because that's really an important thing. But when you move over to the 10 ways emotional intelligence bolsters business and results, you get to talk about things like how do people interact with your students if you're in higher ed? Or how do you interact with your customers if you're in business? How do you build relationships? How do you build trust, not just with your staff in your organizations, but with your constituents and the public and the people that you're working with? And then, of course, coming from medical education, why do doctors need leadership training? It's really important for us, from our perspective, to talk about physicians, right? There's a lot of things physicians need to know. One of the things that physicians don't get a lot of time in their training to work on is, how do I break bad news to a family? How do I sit down with a family and say, here's your course of treatment, the family's financially stressed. How do we manage that? How do we interact with our patients and provide them with care. We can have all the medical knowledge that we need, but in those times, you need to be able to have a physician who can sit down with a family member and have that kind of conversation. You need a physician because whether they like it or not, they're in leadership positions from the very moment they graduate medical school, they head into residency, and they're on residency teams, and they're leading the next generation of physicians. You want them to be able to have confidence and build trust and be able to organize a team and acknowledge everybody's contributions to what's happening in the organization. So all of these things are really important. But this last article, this rise of AI, and why is emotional intelligence important? Who has seen anything in the last, 24 hours on AI? It's everywhere, right? And what's really ironic about this article came out in 2017, okay? So you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, it came out in 2017. And what this article is talking about is this whole point of how we train people that we work with, right? So you can train them on the hard skills. The soft skills are the things that AI can't do, right? And what's really scary about this article is it's talking about things like doctors being replaced by AI. And when we say doctors being replaced by AI, we're talking about the fact that AI can provide quick ways for us to get all of our data, right? It can analyze that data. It could come up with a treatment plan, right? But at the end of the day, you need that physician to be able to sit down with the patient and say, how is this going to work? What do you want to do? What's best for your family? I know you want to go on vacation, so we can delay your treatment this long, but maybe not this long, right? So that's the people part of it. Talks about finance, like investing your money. AI can invest your money and do all of those things. Well, who's going to explain that to me? To the person. Still need those people who can sit down and say, Andrea, I understand you want to retire to the Bahamas, but if you keep putting your kid in travel baseball, you're never getting there, right? I can hear it. I don't know if I'll act on it, but you need the person, the people, right? So how can we take something like that soft skill and really, when you think about your career trajectory, say, that's an area I really want to improve on, because guess what? A machine can't replace that interaction. And that's going to become even more and more important as we use these tools, because they're not going away. And I'm so happy my daughter and her friend are here today. So, but I'm going to say, they're the ones who are going to be like, yeah, I just go on to the thing, and it says the thing, and the button, it pops up, right? Because they're going to be okay with it. They're not going to go back and say, oh, wait, let me check my checkbook. I balance my checkbook against, they're like, what is balancing your checkbook? I can just go online and see it, Mom. Like, what the heck? So they're putting their trust in that. So even if I don't trust it, I've got to be able to build my skill set so that I can still make a powerful impact in my career. Because nobody's going to take my job unless I'm not doing better in the areas where other things can't get done for me, right? Like AI. Dr. Schmude.
Thank you. So just a little bit more information before we get into our Think, Pair, Share, which we hope will actively engage you in this session on emotional intelligence. And so just to give you a little bit of background on emotional intelligence, it was coined by Daniel Goleman, and you can see there are 4 domains of emotional intelligence. The top row has to deal with yourself. I like to say self and others, right? And then the other one is how you regulate, and then the recognition of the emotional intelligence. And within each of those, so if we take a look at self and recognition, we see emotional self-awareness, okay? If we look at regulation and social, we look at influence of others. And so this sets the stage for us to really begin to think about emotional intelligence and the specific domains of emotional intelligence and how it was developed. If you look and if you Google him and you put in TED Talk, it's about an 11-minute TED Talk. And what it really gets at is the use of emotional intelligence in business. But there's about a minute clip in there that really talks about IQ versus EQ, and it's really interesting. I'll frame this in terms of who we train. We train healthcare professionals, but I'll specifically talk about physicians. And so we all know that we need a baseline of IQ, right? We want our physicians to be competent, knowledgeable, so they have the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors so that they can be successful and that they can help treat us, right? We also want them to have emotional intelligence so that we can have a dialogue, we create relationships, we're comfortable with our physicians, right? So we can engage in that dialogue when we do have healthcare needs. And so extremely important, but I would encourage you to take a look at that quick clip, and he'll give you some examples of IQ versus EQ, which I think is extremely interesting for everyone. So let's take a look now at emotional intelligence, and let's take a look at your wheel. This is extremely important as we set the stage for our Think, Pair, Share. Everyone can still hear me in the back. Michael, we're still good? Because I'm a walker and a talker, and I get really, I feel claustrophobic if I'm standing at the stage. So this is an emotional intelligence wheel, and if we had time, and if we each had about, I don't know, $80 for each of you to do a test, we would have had you do this. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do the inventory, and then you get a nice packet back like this with all of your results, okay? And all of your results are within 5 domains, and you'll see the domains: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. Those are the 5 domains of emotional intelligence. Within each of those domains, you have 3 subdomains. So with self-perception, you can see we have self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. I'm not going to go through each of them. You can read them, and we have that quick takeaway for you. But if we did the test with you, you would get a rating for each of these. And basically that rating is color coordinated: red, yellow, green. Red means that you are underutilizing that subdomain of your emotional intelligence. Yellow means you're somewhat using it appropriately, you're in a good area. And green means you might be overusing it. And the Think, Pair, Share is going to focus on 5 domains that we pulled out, 5 subdomains, one from each of the domains for you to think about yourself and then make an action plan. So let's talk a little bit about emotional self-awareness. And emotional self-awareness has to deal with yourself and how you understand your own emotions and how your own emotions impact others. When we get into emotional expression, that has to deal with how my emotions are expressed. And when I express those emotions, how is the other person that I'm with, how are they receiving those emotions, right? So if I'm yelling, right, you're probably going to be like, ooh, I'm going to take a step back, right? If I'm happy and engaged, you might be happy and engaged with me. So again, that has to deal with you and how you project and how someone's receiving it. The other one is you understanding yourself in terms of your emotions. Before I turn it over to Andrea, let's talk about interpersonal relationships. And again, with students, with clients, with customers, right? We're building relationships, that value proposition. And so interpersonal relationships, how you build those, extremely important. So if I was underutilizing my ability to effectively create interpersonal relationships, I, in my workplace, would come in, I would not engage, I might give directives, and then at the end of the day, expect someone to give me their reports of what I asked them to do, without maybe any context, without any feeling, without any emotion, right? I might be very stoic. I might not be utilizing my interpersonal communication skills to effectively deal with that person, right? to effectively communicate of us building a team, what I need out of the goals for the day, and then to get something back that is meaningful that we need to move the organization forward. So extremely important in terms of interpersonal relationships. Any of you, when we deal with students on a daily basis, I'll use it in the context of what we do, to create an atmosphere and a culture that students feel empowered and students can come to us with issues, with problems, and to talk about things, right? That's creating that culture of positivity where we utilize our interpersonal communication skills and our interpersonal relationships to make them feel comfortable. So those are some examples. We're going to use those three in a second, and I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea. She's going to talk to you a little bit more about the final two, and then we're going to get into a think, pair, share.
Okay, so I get to talk about stress management and decision making. And so when you look at stress management, of course you have the three subdomains: flexibility, which is about, again, how flexible are you when things don't go as planned? Or if you're one of those people who just don't have a plan, right? You're overly flexible. What kind of impact does that have on the folks that you're working with, that you're leading? I think sometimes about my children when I think about flexibility, right? Because I like it, it's how I like it. Got to be a little bit more flexible, maybe. And how does that impact those relationships and interactions? We're also talking about stress tolerance, and that's the one we're going to pull out and have more conversation on with all of you. So I don't know if anybody is like me, but I kind of like a little stress. I kind of like it a little bit. If I can push a deadline, I like to push up to the deadline because that keeps me motivated, right? Well, some people don't like that, right? So I would say, I function pretty well in stress tolerance. I like a little stress. But if you're not somebody who has a high stress tolerance and you work with somebody like me who has a little bit higher of a stress tolerance, I can be your stress, okay? So it's taking the minute to kind of understand you and how much stress that you can take. I also, and I don't know, and probably nobody in here falls into this category, the people who, think, I have huge stress tolerance. I'm so good at managing my stress. And sometimes I don't realize how I'm not even managing my stress at all. So I think, again, being mindful of that stress tolerance, because if you're not managing it well, you're doing things like avoiding, right? How's this project going? Oh, it's great. I'm avoiding it. Not doing anything with it at all. And then optimism. How do you view optimism as part of your stress management? It kind of goes back to, again, what Dr. Hazuri was saying, spirituality can help with those kinds of things. Where's your optimism? What are you looking forward to? Are you giving yourself and building towards goals that you can reach? And, what is helping to lower that stress and manage your stress management? Because this is where we're talking about resilience and wellness and all of those things. Then you move on to decision making. Okay, and decision making, you go, okay, problem solving. How am I a problem solver? And that also goes back, as I channel her again, to thought, feeling, action. You have a thought, you get a feeling, and do you act on it, right? And that goes right into that impulse control, right? I think I have fantastic impulse control. I do think I have it, okay? Now, if you talk to people who work with me, since the influx of Zoom, right? Okay, you're online and you forget everybody's faces are online, and then you have wonderful support staff who do minutes and they pin your face, right? And then they send it to you in a text message and they're like, wonder what was happening at this point in the meeting, right? You don't need a mood ring if you can see this face, right? It's an area I have to work on because you don't realize how much people pick up, again, by just your affect. And how many times have you been in a meeting where somebody comes in and they do something and you think to yourself, did you read the room? Did you read the room? So that's again where you're talking about that impulse control, and that is hard, but other things with impulse control are kind of those really big things, right? Like where you maybe know you don't want to send that email, but you send it anyway. Or you stop and then you have it and you read it later and then you delete it, because that's a better way of maybe managing that, okay? And then the other thing is about reality testing. And this again, Dr. Hazuri talked about it. What is going on in here? What is the proof, right? When you have those thoughts and beliefs and things that are trained in your head for a really long time and you think, oh, I can't do this. I can't get up in front of this group of people and have this conversation with them. Well, what's the proof that you can't do that, right? Again, challenging those thoughts, especially challenging those thoughts when you're feeling the feeling before you're acting on the feeling. So those are the areas. So we're going to move into the think, pair, share. So what we want you to do now is look at your wheel, okay? And we want you to think about what we talked about as far as stress tolerance, impulse control, emotional self-awareness, and think about yourself. Where do you think you are with stress tolerance? Do you think you're just about right? Do you think you maybe are overly stress tolerant? Like that would be me over here. Or are you under? I don't want to deal with the stress tolerance at all. Impulse control. You know, when you have that thought, and I could share a story, I might real quick if I could, Michelle. So this week was one of those weeks where a lot of things were happening at home and at work and everything like that. And this is where, again, I wish I wasn't being taped. But I think it's important to be able to share amongst friends, right? Because if I'm going to get up and I'm going to talk about emotional intelligence and how important it is, this is where you help to recognize what happens. So I was at a softball game and my mom and my sister came up from Harrisburg and there was all these things going on and everything like that. And I felt really stressed, and my husband went home and he was doing what he needed to do, and I had to drive the whole way up to Scranton to pick up my other son, and you know, all these things, and I was like, I just want a donut. I just want a chocolate glazed donut. And I'm gonna treat myself, treat yourself to a chocolate glazed donut. So I'm gonna stop at a place we will not name, and I'm gonna drive in, and I'm gonna order myself a chocolate glazed donut because I'm gonna have it on my way up. So you can tell now I didn't realize my stress tolerance was like not where it should be. So I get there, I say, how can I help you? I would like a chocolate glazed donut, please. We are out of donuts. I said, what did you say? We are out of donuts. Can I get you something else? And I had this, I'll just say, rage. Like, it was rage, and it started here, and it went up here, and it was rage. And I went, whatever, and I pulled out of the drive-thru, and I drove down the road, and I called my mom immediately, because she's in the car with my sister, and I'm like, and I just stopped to get a donut, and I'm crying, because I couldn't get a donut. And my sister is going, well, did you ask for a coffee roll? And I'm like, I didn't want a coffee roll. And my mom's going, don't eat your feelings. It's probably better. And it all worked out okay because you can laugh at yourself and everything like that. But I thought it was okay, right? So think about those things, like when you're looking and doing your self-evaluation. So I'm gonna let you take a few minutes, talk to your friends, and then maybe some folks would be willing to kind of share out where they think they are. Or share a personal experience. It's Vegas, right? Except they're taping it. So take a minute or two to think about it.
I wish I
That was great.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get you back together. We're going to pull you back together because we want to hear what you have to say. And I forgot the most important part of my story. So I forgot the most important part of my story. I just want to tell you really quick. I told Michelle it'll only take 5 seconds. So it's the day after the great donut incident of 2024. And I get to work and I'm upstairs in my office and I get a text message from one of my coworkers and says, go down to the front desk. So I go down to the front desk and there is a Dunkin' Donuts bag on the front desk and there are 2 chocolate glazed donuts. Okay, and I hadn't shared this story because I'm not really proud of it, right? Like, it's not like my best shining moment. My mom texted my daughter and said, can you give me one of Mom's coworkers' phone numbers so I can text her and make sure she gets her donuts. So that's the interpersonal connections that we were talking about earlier as well. So I had to share that.
Thanks. That story's awesome. I didn't have a better one, and I absolutely love the donut story. When she was telling me it this morning, I was cracking up. So let's get to our debrief before we get to our takeaways. And so who wants to share an example from one of those 5 where you identify that you might be underutilizing it, and what are you going to do to sort of get yourself from underutilizing it to getting into a place where you're comfortable with using that subdomain of emotional intelligence? So who wants to share one of those that you're underutilizing? Don't be afraid. I know Andrea says, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Again, we know that's not true because we're being videotaped. But who wants to share? Come on, someone. There's like 200 people in this room. Oh, fantastic. Oh, we have a microphone for you too. Raise your hand. Do you need a mic? We have one for you.
Okay, so in my current role, I do work pretty independently and have for years. And I did recently get some help, so I have a contingent worker working with me. So when you have somebody reporting to you, for me, you know, I'm very goal-oriented, like get our work done. So it's been a transition for me to also develop that relationship with her as well. So a story was, and I know I need to work on that, and I have gotten better, but and she's very personable. And she's very efficient. She gets her work done really well. But we were talking about March being our birthday month. And so, you know, we're all excited. It's our birthday month. Well, the day of her actual birthday, I was just so busy, and I was at training, I totally forgot it. Forgot it the next day. Friday, I'm getting ready to leave. I'm telling her to have a good weekend. When I'm walking down the hallway, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot her birthday. So I stopped in her office. And I shut her door, and I started off the conversation with, so I'm an asshole. I just want to tell you, happy belated birthday. I'm sorry I missed your birthday. You know, I just wanted to let you know how appreciative I am of all the work that you do and our friendship that we're having. And then that was that night when I got home, I made a note, and the next morning I called the flower shop and had flowers sent to her at work, waiting for her the next morning. So it's just a reminder that, you know, how busy we get in our roles and how much work we have to do. You have to kind of either put it in your schedule or take that time to remember the folks that you work with on a daily basis and find out things that are important to them and build that relationship. So.
Thank you so much. That's an amazing example. Thank you for sharing it. Some things I heard there is you got so busy, but then you took time later, you paused and you reflected. And then through that reflection, you're like, wow, I need to do something. And you then put a plan in place in order to make that happen, to advance that interpersonal relationship competency. So thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. All right, so now, how about one where you think that you're overusing it? Anyone have one where that you're overusing it? I see a lot of my guy singer friends, so I'm going to call on you if no one else raises their hand. Oh! Will you be willing to share?
I'll share it, since that's very easy.
Oh, perfect.
I was heavy most of my life, and I lived in a shy kind of place. And all of a sudden I developed this over interpersonal person. I come in, I'm in the room, I'm the guest, I'm everything. And sometimes that is just not what the room wants. They don't want me to be the star. You know what I mean? And that's what happens to me, is that I kind of overkill my interpersonal and strangers. I've made a very good friend here. 2 people sat here and both left. So I'm just telling you, that's me. That's my story.
But that, you know what, I just want to say thank you for saying that, but so you were underutilizing at one point, and then sometimes you think that you're overusing, but you're recognizing that, and the whole point is to recognize, and then to either dial it up or dial it back, so you get into that
middle ground.
Right, you get into the sweet spot, right, where all these subdomains of emotional intelligence are working together to really raise the bar in terms of overall emotional intelligence. So thanks so much. So I know we were going to do one in the middle, but it's 10:40 and we have to end by 10:45. And so I do want to ask you this. I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. And I'm going to ask maybe 3 people to share what is your one takeaway from this session today that inspired you to do something different with your own emotional intelligence and advancing your emotional intelligence. So quick, 60 seconds, think about it, and then I'm going to ask maybe 2 or 3 people to share. All right, who has their one takeaway? Yes.
Not feeling guilty about taking time out for me.
Love it. We should all take time out for ourselves. 1. Give me another one. Yes.
Work on my impulse control so I don't experience so much road rage.
I need that too. I'm going to use that as a takeaway as well. And Andrea is going to use that when she's not in the drive-thru getting some type of chocolate lace donut. Okay, last one. Go ahead.
I would say shut my camera off during Zoom meetings, just regroup, because sometimes my message will get lost if I need to.
That's great. And can I just tell you, whoever it is sending you those pics of your face on Zoom, I can't imagine what mine, because I do not have a poker face, and my takeaway is I need a better poker face.
It comes from a place of love.
I do not have a poker face. And so we have about 2 minutes before we end. We wanted to give you an opportunity to ask us any questions. Again, Dr. DiMattia and we are certified emotional intelligence coaches. We have embedded this inventory within our curriculum. We align emotional intelligence with leadership, so we are training future physicians to be emotionally intelligent, competent leaders so that they can engage effectively with their future patients and the patients' families. So, any questions for us? Yes?
Is it common to see people highly function with emotional intelligence at work, and then in their personal life they just drop everything?
Well, I I'm going to give you an example. And I literally said this to my husband before we were coming here. So sometimes you do so much in terms of emotional intelligence that when you go home, you just want to not. And I said, he was driving me out here today, quite honestly, and he was telling me a story he said to me like 7 times, maybe 10, and I could tell you the story, and I said to him, I said, I'm really not trying to be rude, but I need to get in my Zen mode before we're doing this, and are you going to be mad at me if I don't want to listen to your story again? And so I think that's a pretty good example. That literally just happened to me, and he was like, you're so rude. And then like 10 minutes later, I asked him, I said, did you ever eat at that restaurant? He wouldn't talk to me. So that's an example, right? Maybe I shouldn't have said, can you not talk to me? I need to get in my Zen mode. I could have probably done it a little bit better, but I mean, it does happen, right? And so maybe the next time I'll say, oh, do you think it would be okay if we talk about this conversation you've told me 7 times? Maybe I wouldn't even put it the 7 times. A little bit later, because I just want to make sure I'm prepared since I'm getting up in front of like 200 people here, right? So just happened. So I say yes, it happened. I think we're all human, and we have to recognize that you're not always on, right? If you're always on, you are depleting yourself in one of those 4 domains that Dr. Hasori said this morning, and so I think you just have to regulate, but apparently I didn't do so well this morning. Yes? Right? Anyone? Yes?
Do you find that dealing with, you have to deal with, if they were a student athlete or an athlete, that their emotional intelligence is better?
So that's really interesting. That might be a new study for us to take a look at, right? But there is something to be said. So a little bit about how we select students. So I am the chief enrollment officer for the medical school, and so we use a holistic admission process, meaning that we look at academic metrics, because again, we need IQ, right? But we also look at experiences, and experiences talk to they tell us about your emotional intelligence. And so being on a team, being actively engaged in college sports, right? There's a lot of things that go into that, right? It's dedication, it's time management, it's being part of a team, it's collaboration. And so all of those attributes actually do align with, right? We talk about an interprofessional healthcare team that delivers care to the patients. And so I haven't read any of the literature, but I would think that, right, there's a team, right, in terms of sports, and here's a team in terms of interprofessional, a PA, a nurse, the nursing assistant, the physician, all those members of the interprofessional healthcare team, and you're utilizing those same experiences, attributes, values, characteristics that are definitely translational. So great question. I'm gonna actually look at the literature and see if there's anything on that for medicine. So anyway, thank you so much for coming and hearing about emotional intelligence. We hope that you enjoyed this session and have a wonderful day. And we hope that you feel empowered.